So, welcome to Todd Talks, where I help you design your best life, not the life that I design for you, but the life that you desire. Today, I am with Victor Manzo. Is that how you say your name? Manzo?
Yeah.
Manzo?
You said it. You said it the actual way it should be said, Manzo. But most people say Manzo.
Victor Manzo, who is a business mindset expert and coach, pediatric chiropractor, podcaster, speaker, author of 2 books, Rediscover Your Greatness and A Walk in the Dark, and currently finishing a 3rd book, Decoding the Matrix, which we're going to get into a little bit today because I love the Matrix and I think that it really makes you delve into your mind. And I think we're going to delve into each other's minds and really get into ways to help you. And so we're going to just jump right in. You all know me. Victor, if you could just tell a little bit about yourself, how you got to where you are, and what brought you to the point of being a business mindset expert and coach. I would love to hear the story.
Love that. Thank you. And I appreciate you having me on. I'm excited to be here. So I'll keep it short as possible with this. I started out as a chiropractor. That was my passion. I wanted to help people. It changed my life drastically. I grew up in fitness and health, and my mom's a fitness instructor and a yoga instructor. She was taking supplements way before that was a popular thing, especially even yoga. And so up to 19 years old, that's what I was doing, supplements, working out all the time. And as I went to Arizona State for school, my health just started to decline within that year. And I was taking supplements, I was eating clean, I was doing what I was supposed to do. And there was just a missing element. And so long story short, I was originally going to go to medical route. It took a long time to get in there, about a month. And then last minute, my mom's like, why don't you go see Dr. Frank? And that was the chiropractor I used to see when I was a kid for about a year. And so I was like, all right, if you can get me in tomorrow, let's do it. And she did. And my life changed. So I became a chiropractor, very passionate about what I did. And then in school, I learned a lot about many different things, but one of the things chiropractors really focus on is what we do is we remove something called a subluxation. Now, fancy word, big name, you can scrap that out of your vocabulary. Just think of the word miscommunication, because it's literally what it is, and it's just a miscommunication between the brain and the body. And so it was learning in that and understanding it, then I was like, okay, that's cool. What about the cause? What causes these things? And one of the things that kept coming up was, and this comes from 1900, so this is like really cool research. It's really top notch right now. Okay, it's not that it's new stuff. And very sarcastic in this way. But one of the founders, he said it was all 80% of the time it's mental emotional, or autosuggestion is what the term he used. And it's one of those things where it was like, okay, well, how do we change that? How do we work with that? How do we there's got to be some other things we have to look into. So that piqued my interest, and I always wanted to go deeper into things. So I started, while I was in school, I studied energy medicine, about 10 to 12 different techniques. I became a Reiki master and trainer. I started studying universal laws and spiritual truth. I wanted to understand the depth of healing, and then also from there, it opened up the door to understand depths of life and how life works. And so that was my journey. After I learned all these things and took, even neuroscience and stuff I was learning about the brain, and I started to apply it to my business, I saw how I was growing exponentially compared to my fellow colleagues. And then there came a point where I started to go, well, man, I got this kind of figured out. I was already coaching my client, my patients, because again, focusing on not just chiropractic, but holistic health. I was looking at what are things they can do to help with them be more resilient to stress and adapt better to their environment. And as that came along, I had, friends started asking for some, questions on things on life and health and business. And there got a point where I was like, I can put this into I can kind of figure this out. I can kind of put it in a way where I see a big issue with something where education is in self-development and personal development, and even in the business world, about always doing things all the time. And we forget the power, which is the being side. And I was like, you know what, if I could put something together, let me see what happens. And I just started to in 2018, just playing around with it, wrote a book, and then I started doing some group coaching. And just this year in 2022, I went fully into being a business and mindset coach.
That is awesome. I love chiropractors. I've been seeing chiropractors for the last 3 years, like we talked about before we started recording. And I totally get that it's the mental and emotional in your head. When I have a meeting or I have something stressful, that it doesn't even have to be that stressful, but I can actually feel it trigger in my brain that it's a stressor. And suddenly my neck will tighten up, restrict the blood flow to my brain. My shoulders will tighten up and my back will start hurting a little bit from the tightness. And it's like, I know what's causing it. It's the stressor. And then slowly, but then once it's tightened up, it takes a long time to force it to relax or to stretch it to be able to get it to relax, even though mentally I've overcome it's a stressor, I know what's causing it. But to then get the body to react and reverse what it does, that's a lot harder.
Indeed.
So as I understand that you've been writing or just finished writing another book.
I have the editor finishing up as we speak. It should be out by the end of May.
So I love the topic. It's called Decoding the Matrix, correct?
Yes, sir.
And can you tell us a little bit about the book? What does Decoding the Matrix deal with?
Yeah, so in the book is made out of 3 parts, and the first part is all about the matrix. What is the matrix? What makes it up? What influences it? And those kind of things. The second part's all about unleashing your potential and really just understanding what your potential is, right? We hear that word a lot, but it's kind of like, well, what's your definition? What's my definition of potential? Because even in chiropractic, we use a term. We're going to help you express your optimal potential, and it's like, don't say, chiropractors be like, don't say that to a patient. They don't. What potential to them is so vast and different to others. And so I kind of break down what that looks like. And then the third part is all about spiritual awakening. Understand your true purpose here in this life, and just planting seeds and understanding what an awakening process is, the 4 stages we kind of go through, and then how you can be that creator. Because really the spiritual side of things is that you can create your own life, and there's rules and systems to that. And I kind of share that. But going back to what the matrix is, that is, if I had to coin it all into one term, or very, very, very simple, it's just human collective consciousness. Now, what does that mean? If you took everyone's vibration, or basically their thoughts and their emotions and where they put their energy to, or where they're vibing at every single day, and if you average that out throughout all of humanity, that's the matrix. And so what that matrix does then is it always is going to pull you into that frequency unless you're being conscious and aware to be above that. You can go below it, but most of the time nobody wants to go below it. It's already low enough. So we're always, unless you're consciously aware of pulling yourself up, if you're not doing that, it's pulling you back down into it, because it's just keeping everyone at the harmony of where they are. And the I'm gonna say the sad part, but the truth about things is that 95% of our life is subconscious. So 95% of the people in the world are just being controlled and influenced in some way, shape, or form by this matrix. But that's just the totality of it all. There's also sub-matrices that exist, which is like America, Germany, and, Africa. You can go to continents, countries, towns there. And then there's also your family generation, the generations of your family and what they've done, your friends and everything that your upbringing, the culture at the time, and all that is all like influences or sub-matrices that add to the matrix and the experience of it all.
We were just having that exact conversation, not about the matrix, but that conversation about those sub-matrices, as it were, at dinner tonight, where we were talking about the differences not only between American culture, European culture, Norwegian culture, but also in the US, the northern culture versus the southern culture, and what influenced it. What is it about the sun and the being outside, being able to be around friends, more leisure time outside, outdoors in the South compared to cold, harsh winters, a lot of time indoors, more time alone or just with your family, and because of the cold, harsh winters, and also the more industrialized aspect of it, created different subcultures, or so that in the South tend to be more open, friendly, etc. In the North, you see the stereotype of the angry, aggressive, blunt, and so that goes right along with what you're saying. I believe that matrix, that collective consciousness, develops from our environment.
Yeah.
If we allow, and if we don't, if we don't consciously make a change, we'll stay at that level with everybody else.
And that's what I call modern slavery, because that's the new way of, holding people in their vibe. And that's why, because some people say, why'd you talk about the matrix? Then you went to potential, then you go to spirituality. Why is the spiritual part on this? I was like, because if you understand the importance of you needing to be rising above the matrix, and then how the power of really who you are and how you can influence it ourselves, because I said, who controls the matrix? I talk a lot about who those are, and there's a lot of things. I would just say, in the book, I just go, it's the ones who can influence it the most, the ones with most power, right. Usually those are the ones that can influence it. And I said, but the essence of it all is I flip the script then, and I talk about how we are the ones that actually have the power. And then I talk about how from universal principles and so forth, or universal laws, how we can actually raise it by just working on ourselves and so much more. So that's kind of the why I kind of pull that spiritual side in, so you can understand that the power you are, if you work and you keep being focused on it, you may not see it, but you're making monumental little changes in you, and that creates a ripple effect. And now that starts to affect everyone around you. And now all of a sudden we can influence and change that matrix.
Oh, I've totally seen that in my own life. As my wife and I have changed our eating habits. We both lost 30 pounds in the last several months from just cutting sugar out of our diet and cutting flour out of our diet. And I mean, I'm down from a size 38 to a 34, and the 34s are even getting a little loose, which is awesome. But the thing is, the people around us are noticing, family noticing, family making changes in their diet and asking questions about what we're doing and why, and you see those little ripples, the ripple effect. Now, do you have any stories that you would like to share that you could draw, that you drew on to create the book and to create this package, this idea that you're teaching?
Yeah, I share a ton in the book. I'm trying to think of one off the top of my head right now, but if you think about it, let's see here. So talking about the matrix and making changes and so forth and the ripple effect. One of the things I could share is when we talked about the beingness, you just talked about that. You literally shared it with the weight loss, right? You were just being, you did a certain thing, you were shifting your energy that way. You weren't telling family, this is what I'm doing, here's how I'm doing this is what I'm doing here. That's force. You're kind of forcing to get that information out there. Instead, you were just being that element. And then all of a sudden, they were interested. They came to you, right? They started asking the questions. That's power versus force. Now, for me and my stories here, it's like one of the things where I'm going blank right now, but I'll get one in. It'll come.
Sorry, I didn't mean to blindside you with that one.
No, you're fine. I'm thinking of chapters in the book. I'm like, okay, what chapter can I dive into? Okay, there we go. So like one of them was like the spiritual journey, the awakening process. And I share a story of myself when I first went through that, when I started to, and it was in health. And I started talking about like when I started studying health and learning about what health really is, how the body really works, how your genes really want to keep you healthy. You're really designed to be healthy. I mean, it's amazing. And I wish people understood that you're literally designed to be healthy. Yes, there's a time we're all going to transition. That's just the rule of life. Anything in the physical world, there's a beginning and an end to it. But we are designed to be healthy. And I was like, wait a minute. Up. Okay. Still frozen?
No, you're good.
Okay. And so I was like, but then what about cancer and heart disease and diabetes and this, Alzheimer's? I was just going through all these things. And I started saying, when I started going down that path and trying to understand everything, medical, I looked at every perspective. In the beginning, I'm like, how is this being allowed? Like, why isn't anybody saying anything? Like, we've been on the war on cancer now for 40 years. We're not any further away from it than we were when we first started. There's better technology. I'm not saying there isn't. There's other things that we can utilize. I'm not saying that isn't there. But when I say it like that, I'm saying we're still battling it regardless. It's still here and it's only growing. And so all of a sudden, when I started to look at, there was information not really being shared, my stomach will start to turn. I'm like, no, it can't be true. It just can't be true. It can't be this. And I started looking at every element. I mean, I can go from just major chronic diseases like I mentioned there to down to the nittiest gritty stuff from development on. And I was just like, this can't be. And I share how at first I felt sick to my stomach. I was like, I can't let this. And then all of a sudden anger started to kick in because I'm like, I don't like this. This is not okay. And what was happening is what I thought the world was breaking down. My old ideology of the world, and that just wasn't health. I went through that multiple times, and you look at how the world works and different things that are going on, I'm a science geek. I like to learn things from time to time, and like free energy, everyone's talking about energy and this whole thing. And I'm like, Nikola Tesla, just go look up 1901 Nikola Tesla. Look what he did then. Why isn't that existing now? It's one of those things I always ask. And it's one of those aspects of, it's going through that. Then you have to reformat, because you break down your old ideology, which is basically your ego mind of what you thought was reality. And then all of a sudden I had to rebuild that back up and just go, here's how I'm going to proceed moving forward. And then here's the things I'm going to say, this is how I'm going to be a movement of that and make that in that kind of way. That was the beginning of my journey that led me to multiple books that I've written because of that.
No, that's awesome. And one of those things that you mentioned with the health, with the things that are not taught and not shown, why? This is just going to be a total caveat based on today's last 2 years of pandemic, right? Why did so many more Americans die percentage-wise than Norwegians? Okay, well, in the US, this is my opinion, but I think it's based in fact as well, that in the US you have 50% of Americans are obese or overweight, or obese, and 70% are overweight. What comes with that from all the sugars and the processed food and everything, the non-food that we eat? Well, you get heart disease, you get all these other side diseases that have formed that feed off of that terrible food that gets put into people's bodies. And then again, people are locked indoors or don't go out. They're more into playing video games than going outside like we did when we were kids. Now, look at the Norwegians. Smaller population, yes, but winter and summer, I'd say majority of them are outside playing in the elements, skiing, sledding, skiing, more skiing, and they're outside. They're doing stuff, and there's only about 5 to 15% of the population that's obese. Now, that difference alone accounts for a lot of the difference in percentage of people who died from the pandemic, during the pandemic, because you don't have all of those secondary diseases running rampant in your body. And I agree with you that our bodies are meant to be healthy. They're designed to want to be healthy. And I've totally found this as my wife and I have gotten healthy and in shape and gotten rid of the poisons that were in our body. We've seen changes, and it's like, oh, I feel better in so many ways. My resting heart rate's gone down 25 to 30 beats a minute.
That's huge.
And so that's just in health. What if we did that in all aspects of our lives? What if we cleaned out our mind and reformatted our view of the Matrix?
I love it. It would be a whole different world. I mean, I love how you brought up the mind too, because we could food and eating and toxicity. When I was a chiropractor, I used to say people are committing suicide and don't know it. And what I mean by suicide is not the actual suicide of what we're thinking of. I'm saying what we're putting in our bodies, and then your body still. I mean, the amazement of it, it handles it and it adapts to the best that it possibly can with that and still moves forward. I mean, it's just, you have one McDonald's, not that I'm bashing McDonald's or anything, it's just hydrogenated oils. I'll take McDonald's out of it. So just hydrogenated oils. You just have something with hydrogenated oils. It takes 100 days to get out of your system. 100 days. So imagine how many people are constantly eating those things day in and day out. I mean, it's fascinating. But the thing I love you brought up too, though, is the mind side. And that's the bigger one, right? What are you putting in your mind? What are you reading? What are you exposing yourself to? What do you listen to? What are you paying attention to? That is going to create just as much health issues as it is consuming the stuff, or even worse. And even in your life.
I think most people aren't reading. They're watching TikTok videos and watching trash on TV.
Yeah. I mean, you look at, neurologically speaking, you look at the attention span of humans now, we're less than a goldfish. It's kind of sad. And some people say, well, we're just, we're attaining information faster. I'm like, well, we can be, but we're paying attention to things. And we only have an 8-second, time span of an attention span. I go, what does that do for us for learning? What does that do for neurological understanding or building new synapses or connections to adapt to new habits? What's happening is that gap is getting longer now. And so it used to be like, oh, it takes 21 days to, create a habit and 90 days to create a lifestyle. New research is showing it takes 84 days now based on our attention span. And it's because it's all this short-term stuff. And don't get me wrong, there's benefits to it in some ways, but at the end of the day, it's like we're trying to consume things as fast as possible. And that's not a bad thing per se, because if you can obtain information faster, thumbs up. But it's also messing with our attention spans and other things in our life.
Well, I think people don't, and I think we should touch on this after my comment, is people don't spend the time to retain the information. People want to gather, see, get, but then it's in one ear and out the other. We go to 12, 13 years of school, and then we go to 4 years of university. Most people do. It's not required, I don't think, anymore. And what do they get out of that? A lot of things that go in one ear and out the other, and they don't remember 90% of it, 99% of it. But our brains are better than a supercomputer. And our brains are capable of retaining everything. If we use just 10% more of our brain, I remember listening to, what's his name? Proctor Gallagher, and talking about how if we use just 5 or 10% more of our brain, we would be able to speak 84 languages and be able to memorize entire books.
Oh yeah.
Just using 5 or 10% more, but we don't. In fact, we keep shortening that attention span. So the question I would throw to you as a mindset coach is, how do we turn that around?
I love that. There is a lot of things you can do when it comes to peak performance and, challenging your nervous system, being able to expand that kind of perspective, right? This may be a common answer a lot of people say, but I can back it up with science, a lot of science. You have to increase your I call it your muscle of focus, or your focus muscle. And what I mean by that is that you have to. Meditation is a great tool. It's one of the best ones out there. Yep. There are other ones. Don't get me wrong. But see, when I say meditation, a lot of people think of like someone who's just sitting and for 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. You can do meditation in writing. You do meditation in walking. You do meditation in shaving. There's so many ways you can do it, because it's just the intention of focus, just focusing on one thing. And I tell a lot of people sometimes when you start this process, it's like a wild horse. Your mind's like a wild horse. It's going to be bouncing off all over the place. It's going to be very hard. And your job is just, good visual is just pretend like you're pulling the horse back in and calming it down. You're pulling the horse back, calm it down. If you don't like horses, go with dogs, something that has a leash. But you're bringing them back, and that's a good visual to keep you centered. The more you practice that, the better you're going to be able to long-term focus, long-term stay. You reduce the amount of dopamine kicks, right? Because you're talking about like just gather, right? We're consuming and information consuming and just I want more information. And it's like, we need to do less with information and do more with less with information and more with processing it. You're talking to a guy who used to be an ADHD kiddo. So for me to focus, I bounce off walls. And I've written 3 books, which I sit there and I'm like, all right, I got 3 books down. All right, this focus issue, I got it down now. I've been meditating for the last, 15 years now. And so that's one of the things. Chiropractic changed a ton of that for me. Meditation, it was kind of like it shifted everything for me. And then meditation just was like the muscle I had to really just get stronger with and, build that up. And, but once you do that, it's all of a sudden when you can increase your focus from that, now all of a sudden it changes your whole entire life. You don't get distracted by many different things. Your productivity goes up, your energy levels goes up, you're less stressed. And even when you meditate, they've done research where they look at meditations, and it's actually, I think it's like, don't quote me on it, I think I have it right. Yeah, 15 minutes of meditation is 1 hour of sleeping. And that's how much, if you really get into that state, there's so many benefits to it. But it's just keeping it back to what the question is that it's all about creating the power of focus. And the more you can stay centered and focused in something, the more that you're going to be able to increase your attention span, retain more information, and really start to get into that limitless type of living.
That's great. Personally, I like meditation. I don't do it as often as I should. I've been trying to do it daily, and I find some days I have not been able to. And those days when I don't, man, I'm unfocused. It's so much harder when I'm not able to get it in. That's why I love a morning routine. And so that's one of the things I like to teach people is build a morning routine in whatever way that looks for you. If you want to turn your life around, build a morning routine. For me, that's morning meditation, prayer, writing, depends on the day, but watching mind movies and then reading. As long as I can do 3 out of the 5 of those, it usually sets me up for a very good day. And every millionaire, billionaire out there has a morning routine. You know who doesn't have a lot of morning routines? The poor guy down the street. The bum sleeping on the corner. Their morning routine is roll out of bed, cough, and see what life throws at them today.
I love how you bring that up, because I call it setting the tone, right? You got to set the tone for the day. I know Tony Robbins says, like, get in the peak state, or, get your mind, power hour. And everyone has their own phrase. And it's one of those things where I'm like pulling it back to the conversation about the Matrix. And I think this is Ben Franklin said this. It's like, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail, right? And so, like I said, you wake up and you just let life, whatever throws at you. The thing is, if you're not setting the tone, you're not setting that day, getting yourself to be the best version of you can in the beginning, it doesn't guarantee that's going to be a great day. I could tell you just the same thing. Like, if I don't do my basic morning ritual stuff that I like to do, it does throw me off. I may be a little sharp, or I may not just be crystal clear with the things or like mentally sharp like I like to be. And it may throw off my whole entire day. And then I look back and go, oh yeah, I didn't do that. You know what? Let me stop everything. I'm going to meditate. I'll be back, breath work, do my other stuff, and I'll be back in my A game. But it's one of the things, because if you don't, then what's going to happen is you get whatever the Matrix is throwing at you, whatever the vibe is, you're going to get that experience. And that's why, if you look at the collective, right? If you look at, and we can talk about business owners, you look at, like, when COVID hit, look how many business owners were affected by this. And I always say, but look at the billionaires. They went up 60, and I talk about this in my book, they went up 65%. They accumulated wealth. Maybe some of it was manipulation, some of it was not. I don't get into that. I'm just saying, here's a fact. They went up 65% while we were in a pandemic. Do you think they're influenced by the Matrix? Probably not. And so it's setting the tone, doing stuff like that, it pulls you away. You're setting the day for what you want to experience, and give yourself the best chance to have that experience.
Hey, for somebody that's stuck in the Matrix, they're Keanu Reeves, they're attached, they're stuck in the Matrix. How do you give them the blue pill?
Love this. So one of the things you want to do is, focus. We got to get out of our heads first, because that's the first thing. We're too much in our heads. Our mind is great. Or your mind and your brain is designed to keep you comfortable. It's keeping survival. That is what its premise is. That is what its default mechanism is. That is, every single human being has this. It's called the reptilian part of your brain. It's the earliest and the oldest part of our brain. It's our animalistic. It's our primate type. So we all have it. And the way the brain works is, nerves that fire together wire together, and that's Hebb's law, which means the more that you fire a certain part of that brain, the more that I call it like a highway. It's going to continue to widen. And your neurology works on the path of least resistance. So it's always going to go to whatever the least resistance is. And so to spare all the extra neurology I go into, in order to make that shift and change, you got to go into the feeling side of things, right? And so with my clients, sometimes I'll do this with them where they're like, oh, I'm not getting where I want to, or they're looking at their business and it's just like, I'm not getting there. I'm like, well, your focus isn't there. And they'll get upset and I'll be like, listen, I'm not here to make fun or judge. I'm here to just make you aware and let's talk about it now. And so then I'm like, you know what? I need to get your energy right, because your energy is not right. Because if it was, then all of a sudden, and the reason why I'm using emotions or energy, because that's what gives us the power to create our lives. And so, or at least create the magnetism to attract it. And so what happens is that when I get them, I'll say, okay, let's refocus. What is it you want to create in the next, whatever it may be? Or what do you want to have in the next 90 days? What do you want to experience in the next 90 days? What's possible for you, right? And then we can go 6 months, a year, it just depends. And I'll be like, okay, every day I want you to just get up 30 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes, whatever that is, just focus on what it is you want and then tie in an emotion to that of an experience where you did something like that, right? And like for me, it could be, usually it relates around sports. Like if I'm going up to a big challenge and I'm trying to really move things and things aren't just moving as well as I like it to. I'm like, okay, that's fine. I'm learning a lot through this process. This is part of the journey, but I know one thing: I can focus on me and where my energy is, what's my energy and what's going on here. So then I'll just go back to like, I played baseball for 25 years. So I'll think of a time where I was playing against, a championship game, or, a lot of things are on the line and here I come and we succeed and we win, or it came through. And I'll just remember the emotions of that. And then all of a sudden it's like, I get that emotion and I just focus on it for 20 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes. And once it fills me, I'm good. And then if I'll continue to do that on probably every hour, every couple hours, I'll try to continue to do that just because I'm constantly trying to raise my vibe, because my conditioning and my neurology and everything is not there. So most people in the Matrix, their conditioning and their neurology is to be in lower vibrations. And the key is, how do we raise out of that? And the first thing is, got to get into the feelings. And so this is why some people, like, the cool thing is now to meditate for some people. Like I remember a few years back, I had clients going, yeah, I want to meditate. I heard it's cool, it's great. It does all these things. And I'm like, don't do meditation for a fad. If you're going to do it, you got to do it right. And they're like, what do you mean? And I'm like, if you're going to work with me, it's 90. I had a commitment back then. I used to go 90 days, you're meditating the same thing. I don't want it to change. And they would just look at me like, you're crazy. There's no way. I got friends who do this and this. I said, I don't care what anyone does. You're going to do 90 days. And the whole purpose was just to get that dopamine kick to come down. But that's what you do. It's so simple, but it's just getting your mood in the right state. And that's why, like a morning ritual, like my own meditation, it gets me into a neutral creative space. But if you want to, the easiest thing they can do is just literally practice on just focusing on where their energy is and where their feelings are in their body, and really tap there, and then start to create that every day. In the beginning, you have to do it probably every hour to every 2 hours because you're not used to it. But after 30 days, 60 days, you can start to do, 30 days, you can start to do less. And then you get to the point where you just become that vibration. And this is what I love about the universe, the way you know that it's happening and the way you know you're vibing in that way, just look at where your life is. It'll tell you. It's never going to lie. It'll always show you where you're at.
Great advice. Very good advice. So for a person, though, that's been kicked or, just had a bad life, doesn't have that, played for 25 years baseball, doesn't remember that excitement that time, and they're stuck in the matrix. So making it a little more difficult now. How do you get them to raise their vibration if they don't have one of those experiences to draw on?
Learn from others. That's the other thing. How many people had the same experience, or what they went through, or who went through trials and tribulations and came out of that, right? I wrote my second book's all about that. It's called The Walk in the Dark, and it's all about the darkness of life, challenges, obstacles, traumas, you name it. The name could be anything. That's why I call it the darkness. And then how there's a beauty to it, right? And this is where it comes back to beliefs. Now you have to really go back to beliefs. Is the world really a dark place and evil and all this, or is it actually a beautiful experience? What you believe is what it's going to be, and that's how you're going to see the world. And so what if you traded a different code and really 100%, I call them codes. Basically it's just beliefs. It's systems or rules that you put on your life. And that is that everything that happened to me in my past, it can be one or two things. It can be something that's horrible and it's going to hold me down and not let me thrive, because that's kind of the part of the matrix. It's fear, keeping you in the lower vibrations. Or I can start to look at it differently, because the thing is, for that person who is this person who's holding traumas or whatever are holding you back, You've been giving that your power all your life. Why don't we try something different? Why don't we all of a sudden shift perspective just for a second and see it may be something different? And if we can just really believe that and trust that just for a second, then all of a sudden you'll see a whole different world, and you'll start to look back on that and you'll see strengths. You'll start to see, wow, what I went through, whatever that was, this was actually worth it, because look where I'm at now. Look what I may have learned from that. And when we don't do that, we miss out on all those opportunities because our focus is so much on the trauma of losing our power. If it's traumas or a bad event, it could be, or something that may happen that was dark. And from that, and we're putting our energy there, and we're missing out on the other side of that. And so there is science behind it, law of duality, or law of polarity. Whatever experience may be on one end, there's a whole vibration and spectrum on the whole other side. And that's where the power of perspective comes from. And so I would say, look at other people's stories that are very similar to yours of what they went through. They're there. You're not the only person that had that story. Like, my biggest, darkest moment was my financial stuff that I went through. And because there was a lot of ego built up into it, and all this emotion and all these attachments I had. And then all of a sudden I started talking to people, and I heard, I started studying a lot of millionaires, and I was blown away by how many millionaires and billionaires have been bankrupt before. And I was just like, man, if they did that, look at this person. If they did it, they must have learned something from it. So I was like, you know what? Then I don't feel so bad I'm not beating myself up as much anymore. And then I started to really do the inner work to see why that happened. And I saw how I caused it, what was there. And I was just like, holy cow, this is so interesting. And then shifted gears from there.
That's awesome. That's great information. I hope that you are listening to this and taking notes, because Victor is giving you some powerful messages that you can use for your life. One of the things that I've done in the past, and I really like, goes along with what you said. And I like to teach about shadow work, doing the shadow work. And for those that don't know, doing the shadow work is looking deep inside at the things inside you that are hiding, that are in the shadows, that are the root cause of many of your actions. And so when you can find out what is the root cause behind something, then you can root it out, or you can emphasize it to make it better and grow and strengthen it. And so when we're talking about your belief about the world, you can actually change that belief, that negative belief that the world is a dark and ugly place. Rocky says, the world is mean and nasty and ugly place. Ain't nothing gonna hit as hard as life. I love that quote, but he does have one thing wrong. And that is that there's a whole flip side to that the world is actually also a beautiful, amazing, wonderful place. And you can live in one side or the other, and that's your choice. And that's where doing the dark work, the shadow work, the going through your mind and figuring out your purpose will help you to grow. And one of the things, I just lost my train of thought for a second, but one of the reasons I'm pointing this out is that it is so important to figure that out, to be able to leave the past in the past. That's one of the things that I really focus on teaching people is the past happened. You can't change it. It's made you who you are today, but that doesn't mean that has to be who you will be in the future, because the past, it's the past. Let it go. Like what's his name? Rafiki or whatever in The Lion King says, it's in the past. Let it go. Because it can't be changed. So Victor, my next question for you then would be, how do you let something go so that you can move forward mindset-wise?
So for me, everything is all about, in life, everything is perspective, right? How can I see it differently? How can it be different than what my mind's doing? Because again, you've been conditioned a certain way in a certain aspect of things. So when something happens to you, your mind is going to look at that at the vibrational aspect of what you're conditioned to, right? When when you're in a great place, you can talk everything in the world, right? And I always say, that's great, but let me press you, let me challenge you, let me stress you, because guess what? In those moments, we're actually going to see what you really are. We're going to see who you are. And then I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean that in your weaknesses, they're going to show up. Because what you really are holding concrete to will show up very strong. What you're not, we're going to see that. And then there's a lot of work with that, because we can really make massive shifts and changes with that. So for me, it has always been, and I wasn't like this years, in my teenage years, definitely wasn't like this. But as I got older, I started to play with this idea of, well, what if it's something different, right? My cousins and I used to hang out a lot, and we used to say, we're going to make the best of everything. That was our motto in like when we were younger. We're going to make the best of whatever shows up. And we started to do that, and we really believed in it. And all of a sudden, like bad things would happen, quote unquote bad. And all of a sudden, we'd be like, and we look back later and go, man, we had a good time with that, didn't we? I'm like, yeah, that was not fun. But you know what though? Look how we made that happen. And what that taught me is everything was perspective. And in my life today, when certain situations show up, or it may be in a relationship or with my health, or maybe in business, whatever that is, or with clients, it could be anything like that. I'll always look and just say, okay, what I can look this way and go, oh, that's bad. Like, let's say a client doesn't want to sign up, or a patient, didn't get as, saying I'm not getting as well as I think I should be. Okay, there's two things I can look at that. I can look and say, this is not good. This is an objection. This is not great. Or I can flip that script and just say, you know what? This is good because one, there's a teaching moment here. Number two, I can learn something possibly from here that maybe we're missing, and I got to do a little more work. And so the question was letting things go, and that kind of, and to me, it's always looking at what's the gold, what's the good that's going to come out of it. Because in reality, through my own experiences and what I've studied, is that good is always there. We just have to go look at it. So no matter what shows up in your life, like sometimes it's, some of those things are a little harder to let go. There's a belief system there, right? Or a belief there. Sometimes it's like yourself, maybe it's low self-worth, or fear of success, or fear of failure. And then you get a little failure and you're like, oh, this is horrible. I can't believe it. And everything may be going right, but you got 5% not going right, and you're focusing all on that. So it looks like 100%. Why? Because you have that fear of failure. And it's just like, hold on, let's take a step back. Let this be a teaching moment. Let's learn from this. And so as soon as I shift perspective, for me personally, and in business, when I shift the perspective, that's all of a sudden I'm looking at now, what can I learn from this? What can I gain from this? And how is this going to help me become better at what I do or what I'm trying to achieve?
I agree 100%. I think shifting perspective is the key to changing your life around. One of the things that I thought about as you were saying that is when I was younger, I had a motto, and I still have it listed on all the emails that I send out. In the bottom, one of it says, smile, it makes people wonder what you're up to. And for a while, I actually had on there, smile, it makes moody people worse. But my dad thought that was a little bit too mean-spirited, so I stopped putting that one on. But the other one that I have, there's four, but I'll only list this other one. It's an Anais Nin quote, which is, we see the world not as it is, but as we are. And I love that, because it goes exactly into what you were talking about, perspective. That if we change our perspective, we change how we are, we change our view of the world. And going back, all the way back around to the beginning with what we talked about, not just what we do, but who we are, what the being portion of it. And I think a lot of people can learn a lot from you with this book. When is your book coming out?
End of May. So the last day, I think it's May 31st right now is what we're shooting for. So everything's looking good. The editor's like, yeah, I'll have it ready by May 10th. And I'm like, all right, great. I got 2 weeks, 3 weeks to amp it up and get it out there. So.
And how will people be able to purchase it if they would like to get it?
It'll be everywhere online. Amazon will have it for Kindle and paperback. I'm going to try and get the Audible done on the day of that release. We'll see. But you can get anywhere online. It'll be available.
Okay. Now, if someone wanted to reach you and wanted to talk to you about coaching, or some of the beliefs, some of the systems that we talked about today, how can someone get a hold of you? I am going to put the link that you share down in the show notes. So how could someone reach and get a hold of you?
Best way to get a hold of me and everything is through my website. It's www.empoweryourreality.com. I have all my socials right at the top. I also offer a free ebook on visualization, just to understand the power of it. And I talk about the power of the mind and how we can literally, I'll share a couple research studies in there, how we can literally change matter, like how our mind, what we focus on and how we utilize this power of visualization. You can get access to that there. But all my socials and everything, I got my podcast on there, blog and everything, you can get connected there.
That's awesome. I'll be downloading that free ebook myself because I enjoy connecting with you. This is awesome. I think this has been great.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. Yeah, this was awesome. I appreciate you having me on. Great questions. I love them.
Thank you. Well, the way I just draw from your energy, and you're so high energy and everything. It just made for a fun time. So I think people are going to learn a lot from this interview. And I really hope that they reach out either to you on your website, me on my website, fireanddicementoring.com.
Cool.
And so that we can help you. That's our goal.
And you just let me know when it's released, because I will share it all over, like I said, I have a podcast and how it goes. So I'll share it all over all my socials and everything.
Thursday, it'll come out tomorrow.
Sweet.
For me,
cool.
tomorrow evening late. So it'll be in the US, probably mid-afternoon tomorrow. It'll come out.
Cool. So then I'll get it out. I'll get it out Friday then.
And then Friday, Saturday, I'll get the YouTube version out.
Oh, cool. So, awesome. Maybe I'll wait for then. Go ahead. Sorry.
It'll be on my YouTube channel and on the podcast. It's available. Todd Talks are available on Apple, Spotify, everywhere you listen to podcasts. Gotta get that in there, right?
You do.
So yes, thank you so much for your time. And as I always say, have a blessed day.
You too, brother. Thank you.